Hey folks, we're going to the comments on YouTube today for the topic. This one is from I486 DX66. I think I got it. My music. And this question is about AI and displacing software engineering areas. Obviously, it's early. My apologies. So I'm going to talk through this. My perspective, obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I suspect this person also knows that I don't have a crystal ball, but I will do my best to kind of talk through it. A friendly reminder: this channel, this channel is driven by your questions. So if you have questions, leave them below in the comments. Anything software engineering or career development related, happy to try and answer. If you want to be kept anonymous, you can send a message into DevLeader on social media. It's also my main YouTube channel, or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn. I should have a public premium profile for you to send messages to, and should all be no issue. Okay, now can I get one sentence out of my mouth that's proper? Let's see. So, when I saw this comment come in, I was thinking about like how I wanted to answer this, and I feel like my answer is going to be a little bit generic or general, I guess, because I don't think that when I was reflecting on this, there was like obvious categories in software engineering. So, and maybe as I get talking, a couple will come to mind that are a little bit more specific, but I think the parts that are going to be displaced, and you could probably extrapolate this beyond software engineering, right? But I think that the parts that are going to be displaced are starting off with, maybe there are a couple ways to look at this. I wanted to say like the quick fixes, right? I'm sure, depending on who's watching, your career experience and stuff. Sometimes there's like when you have bugs and features and stuff like that have to get prioritized. Eventually, you reach a point, and it can happen early, it can happen later, but you start to have like things that you're like, well, I don't know if that's really a bug. I don't know if that's actually like a feature or an enhancement. It's kind of just like maybe someone disagrees with how it's done, and like it's not necessarily wrong. It's just that it could be improved. And to go fix it or change it's probably like a small amount of effort, but you're also like the value add is not really there. So it doesn't get prioritized. And I think that there's going to be a lot of work that kind of fits into this bucket where, especially from the perspective of a software engineering manager and someone that's been, effectively a product owner, just doesn't get prioritized. I think that this kind of stuff, it's like, cool, like if we want to do it, but we just don't really think it's a priority, go have the LLM do it, right? Go make an issue, have Copilot go do it. Someone can review it. If they don't get to it for a week, like who cares? Because you have to remember, I've talked about this in other videos too, you don't just get stuff for free. Like when you add more work into a sprint or a time period, it's not free, right? I talked about this from the perspective of like high-performing individuals where they think that they're helping. I've talked about this from the perspective of my CTO where I used to work would like, gotta get through that light. He would get more stuff done. Like he would kind of say like, well, I did it because the team was busy. And then now it's like, okay, but you've created more work for people because we can't just ship what you have. So as long as that's like low effort and it's not time critical, then I think it's not such a big deal. But at least to get the code done, have an LLM do it. So I think that's one class of issue. I think there's classes of work that are like migrations, or like package upgrades and migrations that maybe Like, I'm hopeful this is the kind of work that can just be completely taken care of by agents. We were talking about this on the Dev Leader live stream on Monday. Bit of a tangent, but on the stream we were talking about the fact that, when we're using agents and stuff to program, like, it seems kind of ridiculous that something like security isn't something that is like expected from these agents, right? Like, we all know at this point, at least at the time of recording, that when you're having, like, if you're vibe coding or like you're having agents build stuff for you, the security seems to be like a non-existent thing, right? Like, you've heard the horror stories about people leaking secrets and all whatever else on the internet. And so I think a lot of us now, like, if you're aware, you're like, well, I should not rely on the LLM for anything security related. But, like, doesn't that seem kind of ridiculous? Like, for these companies that are building tooling for developers, like, shouldn't the models have, like, I don't know, like, I don't know the right terminology, but, like, if we're using existing models, can they fine tune them for, like, security? Or, like, I don't know, just why isn't that, like, number one thing baked into LLMs for programmers? And I was thinking, like, why that relates to this migration stuff is like, well, this, like, migrating things like, to a different library usage or upgrading versions on things, this is a super common developer pattern, and it sucks the life out of software engineers. It's crazy. I had, even at Microsoft, my previous team, I had someone working on a migration for over a year. Good project for him to own end to end, but, like, man, that's migration. That's one person working on something that has to get done. There's no, it's not getting done. Like, we need to, because the infrastructure is changing, but that's one human being just on my team who basically almost full time was dedicated just to migration. That seems like silly that we have scenarios like that. Not that, like, he did an amazing job on it, but to me it seems silly that we have scenarios like that. And I'm hopeful that, like, that's the kind of thing that LLMs are and agents are just way better at doing. So I hope that's something that gets, eradicated, or at least minimized. I think there's probably prototype work. This one's kind of interesting, right? Because I think that the other ones I've been talking about so far are probably not exciting for developers. Like, probably developers would be pretty happy if, like, they never had to do, like, a package upgrade again and, like, go solve all the issues. But for something like prototyping, I actually think that a lot of people like the idea of getting to play with new things and try it out. So this one, I think, is going to be heavily influenced, because we already see this, like, a lot with especially non-technical people or less technical people that are able to get prototypes out of things very, very quickly. And like, they make the mistake of then shipping it, but if you consider it a prototype, so that you can see something functioning end to end, or mostly, right? Like, I think that's a huge win. Now, this one's weird, because I think that, like, some people like that, like, let me time box it, let me go explore some technologies. So I don't know if this is something that will be fully given up, but could you imagine, like, I don't know if you've done prototyping before. For me, this was something I did for a large part of my career. Even to this day, Like, given my time at Microsoft versus the forensic company, I like over half my career is still in prototyping. So when you're prototyping things, you can be in situations where you're just trying to prove if something's technically feasible, and maybe you don't need a bunch of variations of it. As soon as you can prove technical feasibility, cool, like your work's done on the prototype. But you might have other prototypes that you're doing where you're vetting technology or vetting packages, and you do need multiple implementations to kind of compare and contrast. And could you imagine giving Copilot or whatever your favorite AI agent system is a task to go like, implement this but use X, implement this but use Y, and then you can like, it's not that there's no work to do, but you can go do the analysis after, see how it looks, blah blah blah. Like, I just think that this space, because it is already being heavily influenced and there is a lot of value, I don't see that going away. But I also think that prototypes are something that a lot of software engineers like to look forward to, because it's potentially new, it's potentially exciting, which is great. Now, the other downside with prototypes that I think developers do struggle with is like, get ready to throw that code out, right? A lot of developers don't like that. Like, I worked on this, it's my baby. It's like, yeah, but the goal of it was just to prove, or like to get an answer to a question. We don't need it now. We have the answer to the question. Sometimes the prototype lives on. But, so prototyping is one area I think it's going to be heavily influenced. Maybe not displaced though. I'm also hopeful. Again, I don't know if this is a prediction so much of a wish, but I talked about this on other videos already, but I love the idea of having like, I don't know, like around the clock little code maids that go around and just like clean up your code base and keep it from deteriorating. I don't know if this works in practice for a few reasons. One sec. Oh my god. Okay. I've said in other videos, and I still stand by this, that any code base that you have over time, right, if you're continuing to add to it, even if you're trying to refactor it and keep things tidy and everything else, over time the code base will rot. I don't think people like that idea, right? Like, no, it won't, because it just means you're not refactoring and keeping it tidy. It will rot over time to varying degrees, right? It's going to rot because you didn't plan for everything. And then by the time you have to go refactor things, you might not be able to go, accommodate for every possible variation of things you have. So you're always going to have these like weird outlier scenarios. Minimizing them is great, but over time, these grow. And that's just a reality. It doesn't mean it's not livable. When I say it's rotting, I don't mean like it has, it's now the plague and it's terrible. I just mean that like the quality of the code, especially in areas that aren't really being touched, will degrade. Right? You're going to have these patterns that are left behind from like 7 years ago, and you're like, we don't really like that, but like, whatever, right? It's fine. Like, it's clearly not that bad because everything else is still working, so sure. But I'm hopeful that we can have sort of around the clock agents kind of working through our code bases to chip away at this kind of stuff. I say that I don't know if that works in practice for a few reasons. One, like, can we get there with AI agents? I think so. I think we're so early right now. Like, it's kind of silly. Like, I complain about some things that like Copilot's not doing or Cursor's not doing, because I just have these high expectations, but I'm like, man, it's only like we're just at the beginning of this. So I think the AI agents can get there. I don't know if it works in practice because it's technically more changes, right? So if I was already saying you as your own maintainer of your code base, it's going to rot anyway. Does that mean that AI agents can actually solve that problem? I don't know. So I don't think it solves it. I think that it might help, and I would hope that it helps significantly, because instead of you having to go, I don't have time to go back and clean this up. Classic thing in companies where, the software engineers complain because there's no time for tech debt. But like, what if you didn't have to trade that? What if you could have AI chip away at the tech debt? I think that would be really cool. I talked about this already, but to give you, like, on a different video, but to give you another example, in Brand Ghost, which is the social media content scheduling and cross-posting platform I'm building, there's architectural drift, right? It's a heavily plugin based architecture, and that means that every time I go to do like what I would consider a vertical, so a new social media platform, every single time, and there's like 20, what I do is I realize, like, hey, there's some other way that I would like to improve on this from last time. Or when I'm integrating this, it's slightly different. So like my patterns that I've tried to make generic this whole time, they don't seem to cover this case quite well enough. So then I make the new implementation, like I consider a little bit more. Now there's more insight. But if I were to go back to the first plugin, which would have been like LinkedIn support, it probably has, compared to the other social media platforms, the oldest architectural patterns associated with it. And over time, like, absolutely, I've gone back and I've like upgraded some of them that matter. And others I'm like, it's just going to be drift for now. But imagine if you could keep track of this and have AI chip away at it. And you could just reduce or minimize your architectural drift. I hope that this kind of work is stuff that will get eliminated. So these are all things that I'm thinking of, but it's not like this type of role. On that note, and just to wrap it up, because I got to CrossFit, I think that people that are not leveraging AI in some way, are probably going to find that the world around them has changed. So this is also why, like, I am trying to use AI agents, like, even in my IDE when they're frustrating me, because I don't want to just stop and then 5 years go by and I go, oh crap, like I fell behind. So I'm trying to keep track of these things. I'm trying to make it part of my flow. Things like GitHub Copilot with pull requests, absolutely game changing. I have a contact at Microsoft. I'm going to see if I can get some more content made on this feature. My video on my main channel, my video editor is out right now for some family stuff, but I have a few videos pending on this. Like, they're done from my side, but they're not edited, so I'm gonna wait. But I'm gonna try to crank out some more, and I'm gonna ask this person if there's, like, features they want me to highlight, especially if there's new stuff coming. That would be super cool. But anyway, that's my answer to this. Thank you for the question. If you have your own questions, leave them below in the comments or send a message to DevLeader on social media. See you next time.